The alarm bells screamed through the merchant ship Harmony's light like dying metal. Captain Velter's 4 hands darted across his control panel, claws clattering against glass, but nothing worked anymore. The ship shuddered under another blast, lights flickering as sparks rained from the ceiling. "How many?" Velter rasped, his voice low but sharp. Zeph, his second officer, wrestled with a damaged scanner, his mandibles trembling. "3 ships, Captain, Krex dreadnoughts, the biggest kind." The bridge fell into silence except for the groaning hull. Everyone knew what that meant. Krex raiders were monsters in steel, warships that swallowed civilians whole. Crews captured by them did not survive. On the main screen, Harmony's light glowed weakly in the black. Its engines were silent, shields gone, life support 2 hours at best. All around the captain, 200 innocents waited. Families, traders, children clutching toys while their parents whispered empty promises. None of them were soldiers. They were only trying to reach the Meridian colonies, chasing a better life. Now they were prey. Velter's voice cut the silence. "Send the distress call, all bands, maximum power." Captain Zeph's voice cracked. "That will drain the last of our comm reserves. We'll be deaf afterward." "Do it anyway." The crew hesitated, then obeyed. Across every channel in every language the ship's computer could muster, a simple message went screaming into the stars. "This is the merchant vessel Harmony's Light. We are under attack by Krex raiders in the Kepler 442 system. 200 civilians aboard, engines dead, life support failing. Please, anyone who hears this, we need help now." The message rippled outward like a dying heartbeat. "The great powers listen." On Thern Prime, jewel of the Thern Empire, Admiral Corse read the transcript from his comfortable office. His aides whispered about logistics. His fleets were stretched thin. Krex dreadnoughts, days away, too late. "Send condolences to their families," Corse muttered, sliding the report aside. "Our fleets are needed closer to home." On Vorin Confederation's War Council, General Vex slammed his clawed hand onto polished stone. 3 Krex ships against ours? We'd lose everything, not worth the risk. In the Meridian Trade Alliance, cold numbers spun through profit and loss algorithms. President Kavar leaned back, expression neutral. "Business is business. We cannot risk assets for one vessel." Dozens of worlds, dozens of leaders, all chose silence. The distress call echoed through the void, heard but unanswered. Aurora Station. At the far edge of known space, in a lonely listening post called Aurora Base, Lieutenant Jake Morrison nearly dropped his coffee. The console lit up, alarm klaxons shrieking. A signal urgent, raw, desperate. He tapped the controls and a voice filled the empty control room. Strange, clicking consonants, insect-like, but translated cleanly by the system. 200 civilians, life support failing, anyone, please. Jake's stomach turned to ice. He sprinted through silent halls until he burst into Commander Lisa Parker's office. "Commander, you need to hear this." Lisa Parker looked up from her reports. Her hair was gray, cut close. Her eyes had seen too much in 20 years of service. She said nothing as Jake replayed the recording. When it ended, she stood perfectly still. Only her clenched fists betrayed her rage. "How far?" 6 hours at maximum speed, Jake said. "What ships do we have in range?" Jake's throat tightened. He checked his slate. "Just one, the UES Defiant, old hull patched half a dozen times, 300 crew, not combat tested." Parker closed her eyes for a heartbeat. She already knew. Against 3 Krex dreadnoughts, the Defiant was a mouse facing wolves. "Any other responses?" Jake shook his head. "Lots of sympathy, no fleets." Parker turned toward the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, families were waiting to die while empires calculated their profit margins. She thought of her daughter back on Earth. What kind of galaxy would she inherit, a place where the powerful ignored the weak? Her voice was steel. "Get me Captain Bennett, secure channel." The captain's choice. Minutes later, the tired face of Captain Roy Bennett filled the comm screen. A man in his 40s, his hair already dusted with gray, his eyes kind but weary. Behind him, the Defiant's bridge buzzed with quiet focus. "Lisa," he said warmly, "what happened?" Parker played the distress call. Bennett listened without a word. When it ended, his expression was heavy, his jaw set. "How many?" 3 Krex dreadnoughts, each twice your size." Bennett looked around at his crew. Familiar faces. Men and women who had laughed with him, served with him, trusted him. Each had families waiting at home. "Any other ships responding?" he asked. "No one," Parker's voice was bitter. "The great powers all said it's too risky, too costly." Bennett was silent. 200 civilians, 300 of his own crew. The smart choice was clear: retreat, live to fight another day. But he had never been a man for smart choices. "Jake," he said suddenly, "you recording this?" "Yes, sir." Bennett straightened in his chair, shoulders squared. His voice carried across the stars. "This is Captain Roy Bennett of the United Earth ship Defiant. We have received a distress call from the merchant vessel Harmony's Light. They are under attack by Krek's raiders with 200 civilians aboard. I know the odds, I know the risks, but those people called for help and no one else answered. If we don't go, they all die. If we do go, maybe some of them live. That's good enough for me." He turned to his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We face 3 enemy warships, each larger than us. Anyone who wishes may step aside. No shame, no marks on record." Not a single person moved. Weapons Officer Bate Clark spoke first. "With respect, Captain, where else would we be?" Bennett's lips curled into a grim smile. He nodded once. "Commander Parker," he said quietly, tell them help is coming." Parker's voice caught in her throat, but she forced the words out. 6 hours, Captain, good luck." Bennett's eyes softened. Not luck, just duty. The screen went dark. Into the fire. The UES Defiant turned from her patrol route. Engines roared, pushing the battered old ship into hyperspace. On the bridge, Bennett stood tall, watching stars twist and vanish. His crew worked in silence, each person knowing what waited at the end of the jump. 3 dreadnoughts, death itself. But behind them, 200 voices had cried out in desperation, and for once, humanity had answered. Outside the viewport, space shivered as the Defiant plunged toward the Kepler system. 6 hours to battle. 6 hours until the galaxy learned what it meant when humans answered a call for help. The Harmony's Light drifted in silence, its hull bleeding smoke into the void. Captain Velter stood on the bridge, mandibles clenched tight. The Krek's dreadnoughts loomed on his screen like black mountains, their hulls bristling with weapon ports. They didn't even bother firing now. Why waste ammunition when their prey was already dying? Families huddled in cargo bays below, children whispering in fear. Crew members tried to repair failing life support with bare claws and broken tools. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time. "Captain," Zeph whispered, "do you think anyone heard us?" Velter looked at the young officer. His eyes betrayed the truth. No one was coming, not for a ship of exiles, not for civilians without wealth or power. Still, he forced strength into his voice. "Someone will, they must." But even as he spoke, the dreadnoughts shifted closer. Defiant's crew. 6 hours away, the UES Defiant hurtled through hyperspace. On the bridge, the crew worked in quiet preparation. The tension was thick enough to choke. Weapons Officer Bate Clark ran diagnostics on every cannon and missile tube, though she already knew the truth. Half their systems were outdated, some held together with duct tape and prayers. Navigation Officer Chris Baker leaned over his console, recalculating attack vectors. His hands trembled only slightly. "Captain, if we run sims, 99 outcomes end with us destroyed in the first 10 minutes. Bennett didn't flinch, and the 100th. Chris looked up, his throat was dry. "We save them." "Then that's the one we're fighting for." Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Sam Williams was already soaked in grease and sweat. His voice rasped over comms. "Captain, I can push the reactor 130% past safe limits. It'll buy us more speed, more shields, but if it burns out..." "Then we're dead," Bennett finished. He paused. "Do it." In the med bay, Dr. Susan Torres checked her supplies. Burn gel, transfusion packs, bone knitters, not nearly enough. Her assistant, a young medic, hesitated. "Doctor, we can't treat what's coming." Torres snapped the kit shut. "We'll treat whoever we can, that's what we do." And in the fighter bay, Lieutenant Kelly Adams sat in her cockpit, helmet resting on her knee. Her craft was old, scarred, patched, but she stroked the control stick like an old friend. "Come on, girl, one more fight." All across the ship, 300 souls prepared for an impossible battle. Not because they expected to win, but because someone had to try. A Deathworlder's memory. Captain Bennett stood alone by the forward viewport, watching hyperspace tear past. He thought of Earth, blue skis, storms that could tear cities apart, predators with teeth longer than a man's arm. Humanity had crawled up from that chaos, had learned to endure, to persist. His grandfather had once told him, on Earth, you don't survive because you're the strongest. You survive because you don't stop moving forward. That was what they carried now across the stars: persistence, stubbornness, humanity's curse and humanity's gift. Jake Morrison's words replayed in Bennett's mind. No one else answered. That was all that mattered. The Krex war leader. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, war leader Scarth watched the drifting civilian vessel with cold satisfaction. His scales shimmered like black steel under the dim lights, his yellow eyes unblinking. Life support will fail in less than 2 cycles, reported his second. They will suffocate before we even board. Scarth hissed softly. Good, let them know despair before the end. It makes them easier to break. A communications officer approached. War leader, a signal. A human warship approaches. Small, old. They are 6 hours out. Scarth tilted his head. He had fought many species. Humans were young, barely crawling into the stars. He had studied their files, fragile bodies, primitive weapons. Brave, yes, but bravery without power was nothing. One ship, his laugh was like grinding metal. One ship dares face 3 Krex dreadnoughts, let them come, it will amuse me. The bridge crew hissed in shared laughter. Prepare a message, Scarth ordered. When they arrive, I will offer them one chance to flee, then we will tear them apart. The meeting of eyes. 6 hours passed like the heartbeat of a dying star. Space rippled, light twisted. And then, like a ghost in the dark, the UES Defiant dropped out of hyperspace. On the Defiant's bridge, the crew stared at the screen. There they were, 3 Krex dreadnoughts, each a fortress of steel and firepower large enough to blot out the stars, circling like predators around a wounded deer, the Harmony's light. My God, whispered Chris Baker, look at the size of them. Bennett's heart thudded, but his voice stayed steady. Size isn't everything. Captain Bate Clark reported. Weapons primed, shields at maximum, engines already overheating. Good, let them know we're here. The comm system crackled to life. A deep, rasping voice filled the bridge. Unknown vessel, this is War Leader Scarth of the Krex fleet. You have entered a combat zone. State your business or be destroyed. Bennett stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady, human. This is Captain Roy Bennett of the United Earthship Defiant. You are attacking a civilian vessel. Release them and surrender, or we will take them by force. There was a pause, then laughter. Cold, hissing, merciless laughter that made every human on the bridge stiffen. Human ship, Scarth said. I have studied your species. You are young, weak, untested. You stand alone against 3 of my finest warships. I will give you one chance to flee before I scatter your bones across the void. Bennett's gaze swept his crew. Their faces were pale, but none looked away. He leaned close to the comm mic. His voice was low, hard. You picked the wrong fight. Release that ship or we're coming for you. The Krex channel went dead. On the view screen, all 3 dreadnoughts turned toward the Defiant, weapons arrays lit with deadly light. Bennett raised his voice across the ship. All hands, battle stations, we are outnumbered and outgunned, but those people called for help and we are the only ones who answered. Let's show them what humans do when innocents are in danger. The ship trembled as the first Krex plasma cannons flared to life. Captain Clark shouted, incoming fire. The bridge shook like thunder as the first blast struck. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, sparks rained. The battle had begun. The void lit up in a storm of plasma. The first salvo from the Krex dreadnought struck like a hammer blow. The Defiant rolled hard, but 3 blasts slammed into her shields. The deck shuddered. Crew were thrown from chairs. Warning sirens screamed across the ship. Forward shields at 60%, Bate Clark shouted. 2 more hits like that and they're gone. Then we don't give them 2 more, Bennett barked. Chris, bring us in close. Chris Baker's hands flew over controls. Sir, close means suicide. No, it means they can't target us all at once. Move. The Defiant lunged forward, darting between massive plasma bolts like a knife weaving between boulders. For every hit dodged, Another tore across her hull, ripping armor, sending sparks across corridors. The human way. In the engine room, Sam Williams cursed as conduits exploded around him. Fire suppression gas hissed through the vents. His hands, already burned, shoved a live cable back into its socket. The jolt lit his nerves on fire. "Captain needs shields," he growled through clenched teeth. "Rerouting auxiliary power." "Sam, the conduits can't take," a junior engineer began. "They'll take it or we all die." The reactor roared, and the shields flickered brighter just as another Krex blast smashed into them. Above the hull, in the fighter bay, Lieutenant Kelly Adams sealed her helmet and punched her launch codes. Her fighter's systems barely held together, but the engines coughed to life. "Adams launch denied," Control shouted. "Override," Kelly snapped. "Those big bastards won't know what hit them." The hangar bay doors screeched open, and her small craft shot into the firestorm outside. She banked hard, plasma fire streaking past her cockpit like red lightning. "Defiant, this is Adams, going for their weapons arrays." Bennett's voice crackled back. "Kelly, you can't take on a dreadnought with one fighter." "Watch me." Her fighter spiraled through debris, weaving between Krex interceptors already scrambling to intercept her. On the bridge, the Defiant rocked again, consoles exploding in sparks. "Shields at 35%, Bate Clark shouted, her voice raw. Bennett gripped his chair. His crew looked to him, not for miracles, but for steadiness. "Return fire, target their forward batteries." Clark's fingers slammed controls. The Defiant's guns spat brilliant lances of energy. They struck the lead dreadnought's shields, exploding in dazzling bursts. "Minimal effect, Captain. Their shields are too strong." Bennett's eyes narrowed. "Then we get creative. Chris, take us right under their hull." Chris blinked. "Sir, that close, their guns will rip us apart." "They expect us to fight at range. We're not giving them what they expect." The Defiant dove. Enormous plasma bolts flashed past, missing by meters. The dreadnought loomed above, a mountain of black steel. The Raiders' confusion. On the Krex flagship, War Leader Scarth hissed, narrowing his eyes. "They are insane," his second muttered. "They should retreat." Scarth's talons scraped metal. "No, they are improvising." The human ship darted dangerously close, slipping under the massive dreadnought's guns. Krex turrets strained to aim downward, too slow to track. "Fire missiles," Scarth roared. But the humans were already there, beneath his ship, weaving between the armored ridges of the hull. "Boarding fire." Back on the Defiant, alarms wailed. "Starboard armor breach," a crewman shouted. "Deck 7 losing atmosphere." "Seal it off," Bennett snapped. He turned to comms. "Mike, status on boarding teams." Security Chief Mike Harrison's voice came back, rough and steady. "We're ready, Captain. If you can get us close enough, we'll cut into their hull." Bate Clark's eyes widened. "Sir, you can't be serious. A boarding action against them." Bennett didn't blink. "We're not here to play safe. Tell your men 20 minutes. The merchant ship. On the Harmony's light, Captain Velter and his crew watched in disbelief. The tiny human ship, scarred, battered, smoking, fought like a wild beast. It darted through plasma fire, striking with precision, refusing to die. Zeph whispered, awestruck, "They're insane." Velter's mandibles clicked softly. "No, there's something else, something we've never seen before." Hope flickered in his chest for the first time since the attack began. Kelly's gamble. In the void, Kelly Adams grit her teeth. Krex fighters swarmed her, claws of steel and plasma closing in. "Too many of them," she muttered. Her cockpit shook as a blast grazed her wing. She spotted a weak point, a cluster of sensor arrays on the second dreadnought. If she could blind it, maybe the Defiant would last longer. "Defiant, I'm going in," she said. Kelly, Bennett started. But she'd already cut comms. Her fighter dove into the swarm, rolling, spinning, plasma bolts streaking past. She fired everything she had. Explosions lit the dreadnought's flank. The massive ship's targeting arrays flickered. "Direct hit," Bate Clark cried. "Captain, their sensors are blinded." On the bridge, a cheer erupted, cut short as the Defiant took another direct hit. Consoles burst. Smoke filled the air. "Shields at 12%. Bennett's voice roared through the chaos. "Hold the line, we're not done yet." The turning point. Scarth's scales rippled with irritation. His claws dug into the command chair. This is not possible, he growled. One ship cannot stand against three. War leader, his science officer said, voice uncertain. They are not fighting like any species in our records. Their tactics are illogical. Scarth hissed, illogical, reckless, stupid, yet somehow working. On the tactical display, his second dreadnought's sensors failed completely. His crews reported heavy casualties from boarding attempts. And still, impossibly, the human ship fought on. What kind of creatures are these? Scarth muttered. The Defiant roared past the dreadnought's flank, guns blazing, smoke and fire trailing from her own battered hull. Inside, crew fought flames, patched holes with their bare hands, kept the ship alive through sheer will. And on every channel, one message repeated like thunder. We are the Defiant. We do not abandon the helpless. Cliffhanger. Bate Clark looked up from her console, face pale. Captain, she whispered, they're charging all three main cannons at once. If they fire, it's over. On the screen, the Krex ships aligned. Plasma batteries glowing hotter, brighter, gathering enough power to vaporize the Defiant in a single strike. Bennett stood, shoulders squared, jaw set. Then we hit them first. The Krex dreadnoughts glowed like suns, their main cannons charging. The lights spilled across the Defiant's bridge, painting every face in death's hue. Captain, they'll fire in 20 seconds, Bate Clark shouted. The ship shook violently as secondary plasma fire ripped past. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Chris put us nose to nose with the flagship, Bennett barked. Chris Baker's eyes went wide. Sir, we'll be vaporized. Not if we get there first. Move. The Defiant surged forward, diving straight into the storm. Reckless maneuvers. Plasma fire slashed across the hull. Shields flickered, failed, flickered again as Sam Williams in the engine room rerouted every scrap of power he could find. His voice rasped through comms, coughing through smoke. Captain, I'm holding her together with spit and prayers. If you want more, I need miracles. You're a human, Sam, Bennett said. Miracles are our specialty. Williams grinned despite the burns on his hands and forced another surge through the reactor. The lights flickered, then held. The Defiant shot forward like a spear, slipping under the dreadnought's guns just as they fired. Blinding plasma bolts streaked past, missing by meters. Enemy barrage missed, Bate cried. Cheers erupted across the bridge, cut short as the Defiant took a glancing hit. The deck heaved. Crew were thrown like ragdolls. Starboard hull breach. Seal it off. Gravity failing on decks 4 and 6. Bennett's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and calm. Harrison, now. The boarding party. Security Chief Mike Harrison slammed his helmet into place. The small boarding craft shuddered as it launched from the Defiant's damaged bay, weaving through fire toward the second dreadnought. Inside, 20 Marines checked weapons, faces pale but resolute. Harrison looked them over. You all know the odds. No promises we come back. But every second we hold them up is another second the captain keeps those civilians alive. No one flinched. Then let's give M hell. The craft slammed into the dreadnought's flank with a bone-jarring impact. Magnetic clamps held, cutting torches hissed. Sparks showered the dark as they sliced into Krex steel. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The hatch blew open, and the humans charged into hell. Tooth and claw. The Krex soldiers were bigger, armored in chitinous plates, claws like knives. Their roars filled the corridors. Harrison's Marines opened fire, rifles spitting energy bolts. Krex bodies fell, but more surged forward. Hold the line, Harrison shouted. A Krex warrior slammed into him, claws tearing across his armor. Harrison fired point-blank, the alien collapsing in a hiss of smoke. He kicked free, blood running down his arm. Push forward, reactors this way. The humans fought room by room, hallway by hallway. Every step forward was paid in blood. When rifles ran dry, they fought with blades. When blades broke, they fought with fists. And still they moved forward. The merchant ship watches. On the Harmony's light, Captain Velter's crew stared at the unfolding battle. The tiny human ship should have been ash and wreckage by now. Instead, it darted through dreadnought fire like a maddened predator, scarred but unyielding. And now, Impossibly, it had launched soldiers into a Krex warship. Zeph whispered, voice trembling, "They're not trying to survive, are they? They're trying to win." Velter's mandibles clicked softly. "No, they're trying to save us." Kelly's desperation. Outside, Kelly Adams weaved her fighter through chaos. Her craft was bleeding sparks, one engine sputtering. "Defiant, I'm almost out of ammo." Bennett's voice cut back. "One more run, Kelly. Hit their missile bays. If they fire a spread, we're finished." Kelly clenched her jaw. Her cockpit shook under enemy fire, alarms wailing. "All right, girl," she muttered to the fighter. "One last dance." She rolled through debris, spun past 2 interceptors, and fired her last payload into the missile bays of the second dreadnought. A chain of explosions ripped across the hull, blinding bright. "Direct hit," Bates shouted from the Defiant. "Their missile systems are offline." Cheers erupted again, cut short as Kelly's craft took a final blast. Her engine died. "Kelly," Bennett shouted. "I'm ejecting," her voice came back, steady despite the chaos. "Don't wait for me." Her escape pod shot free, spinning through the void. The war leader's fear. On the Krex flagship, war leader Scarth stared at his tactical display. His lips peeled back in a hiss. "One ship," he whispered. "One human ship against 3 of ours." His science officer's voice trembled. "War leader, I accessed the Galactic database. This species, their homeworld is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld." Scarth turned slowly. "Deathworld." "Yes, war leader, gravity higher than standard. Atmosphere toxic to most life. Storms that can level cities, predators that outweigh them 10 times. They evolved as persistence hunters. They run prey to death. Their entire biology is designed to endure." Scarth's claws tightened on his chair. Persistence hunters, that explained it. They should have broken already. They should have surrendered. Instead, they fought harder the worse things became. For the first time in his long career, Scarth felt a flicker of something alien. Fear. The void shimmered as ship after ship dropped from hyperspace. At first, only a handful. A Zelanian cargo hauler, its hull patched and rusted. 3 Meridian exploration craft, barely armed. A Voran mining barge repurposed for hauling ore. Then more, freighters, scouts, even a salvage tug with mismatched engines. Civilian ships, ships with no weapons worth mentioning. Ships that had no business in a war zone. But they had come. On the Defiance bridge, Jake Morrison stared at his comm panel, voice breaking. "Captain, I'm getting open transmissions from all of them. They say they're here to help." "Help," Bate Clark said, incredulous. "They'll be slaughtered." "They know that," Jake whispered, "and they came anyway." Bennett's heart surged. He opened a channel. "All vessels, this is Captain Roy Bennett of the Defiant. The civilian transport Harmony's Light is under threat. We will hold the Krex as long as we can. Any aid you can provide is welcome." The replies came fast, overlapping across frequencies. "This is Captain Nex of the Steady Prophet. We're not soldiers, but we won't stand by. Mining vessel Recreer, we'll ram if we have to. Explorer ship Swift Current, ready to shield the civilians." Voices of a dozen species. None coordinated, none trained, but every one of them willing to risk everything. For the first time since the battle began, Bennett's chest swelled with something beyond resolve. Hope. The war leader's rage. On the Krex flagship, Scarth rose from his command chair, his scales rippling with fury. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. His second stammered. "War leader, they are unaligned ships from across the sector. Merchants, miners, volunteers." "Volunteers," Scarth hissed. "No one volunteers to die." But his eyes betrayed unease. The humans had done something he had never seen. They had inspired. The Krex response. "War leader," the weapons officer growled. "Their numbers are nothing, but they are interfering. Shall we clear them?" Scarth's eyes narrowed. "No, kill the civilians." The bridge went silent. "Target the Harmony's Light," Scarth commanded. "If we cannot have it, then no one will." His fleet shifted, weapons aligning on the helpless merchant ship. The wall of volunteers. On the Harmony's Light, Captain Velter's crew gasped as the Krex ships pivoted. Weapons glowed hotter, brighter. "They're targeting us," Zeph whispered, terror flooding his voice. But before the first shot fired, the new arrivals moved. The Steady Prophet slid into position, blocking the Krex's line of fire. Then the Recreer, massive and clumsy, lumbered between the dreadnoughts and their prey. The swift current followed, joined by others, freighters, tugs, even a medical supply shuttle. A wall of fragile ships placed themselves between the predators and the wounded. "They're shielding us," Zeph said in disbelief. "They'll die." Velter's throat tightened. "No, they'll live in the eyes of history." The Defiant's gambit. On the Defiant, Chris Baker's console blared. "Captain, the Kreks are charging again. The civilians can't hold that barrage." Bate Clark's fist slammed her controls. "We can't match their firepower. We're out of time." Bennett's gaze fell on the tactical map. One option glared back at him. Dangerous, reckless, almost certainly suicidal. "Chris," he said slowly, "plot a collision course with the flagship." The bridge froze. "Sir?" "You heard me, ramming speed." "Captain, if we do that," Bates started. "We take one of them with us," Bennett cut in. His voice was calm, steady, absolute. "Maybe it gives those people a chance." A long silence. Then one by one, his crew nodded. The engine room. Sam Williams wiped blood from his face with a blackened hand. His console blinked red across every system. "Captain, you want ramming speed? Then I'll give you ramming speed. But when I overload this reactor, we won't be pulling away." Bennett's voice came through the comm. "I know, Sam, do it." Williams exhaled, then grinned despite himself. "Hell of a way to go out." The boarding team. Inside the second dreadnought, Harrison and his Marines fought like cornered beasts. Their rifles glowed white-hot. Their armor was shredded. Blood streaked the walls. They reached the reactor chamber, kicking in the final doors. "Secure it," Harrison bellowed. His men planted charges across the reactor core. Krek soldiers stormed in from every side. Harrison fired until his rifle clicked dry, then swung it like a club. His knuckles split, blood spraying, but he did not stop. "Captain," he gasped into comms, "we've got the reactor. We can blow this ship." "Negative, Mike," Bennett replied. "Hold it if you can. Detonate only if you have no choice." Harrison grinned through bloodied teeth. "Understood. We'll keep it warm for you." Kelly's view. From her tiny escape pod, Kelly Adams floated through wreckage. Her cracked visor showed her the madness unfolding, civilian ships interposing themselves, the Defiant charging like a wolf at giants. Her chest ached with pride. "That's it, Captain. Show them what we're made of." The broadcast. Bennett opened all frequencies. His voice carried across the battlefield. "This is Captain Roy Bennett of the Defiant. To everyone who hears me, you all got the same distress call we did. You all heard the same plea, but most of you chose silence. Too risky, too costly, too far." He paused, his words like a knife. "Well, we chose different. We chose to answer, because that's what being civilized means." His voice rose, thunderous. "You want to know what humans do when innocents are in danger? Watch us. Watch us now." The channel cut. Across the battlefield, crews of a dozen species shivered, some in fear, others in awe. Cliffhanger. On the Defiant's bridge, Chris Baker's voice was quiet, steady. "Captain, 30 seconds to impact." The ship groaned as her engines screamed, hurtling toward the Krek's flagship. Around them, the civilian fleet held formation, bracing for the impossible. In the Krek's command chair, Scarth stared at the incoming human vessel. Its hull torn, burning, bleeding fire into the void, yet still charging, still coming. His second shouted, "War leader, your orders." Scarth hesitated. For the first time in his life, the Predator did not know what to do. The Defiant screamed toward the Krek's flagship, her engines howling beyond safe limits. On the bridge, every console glowed red, systems failing, fires spreading, but the crew stood at their posts, calm in the storm. 20 seconds, Chris Baker said, his voice steady though sweat dripped from his brow. Bate Clark's hands clenched her controls. Weapons ready, firing every shot we've got left. Bennett gripped the railing, his jaw set. All hands brace for impact. The Defiant was a spear of steel and stubbornness, aimed at the heart of giants. The wall holds. Behind them, the civilian fleet strained to shield the Harmony's light. The steady Prophet shuddered as Krek's fire ripped across its hull. Fires raged, atmosphere vented. Still, Captain Nex refused to retreat. "Hold position," he shouted. "We die standing." On the Recreer, Captain Yara's mining vessel shook apart piece by piece. She turned to her crew, eyes blazing. If this is our end, let it be said. Miners stood with humans. One by one, the small ships held their fragile line. They were no soldiers, but they did not move. The Kreks strike back. War leader Scarth's voice thundered across his bridge. Target the civilians, break their wall. The dreadnoughts unleashed hell. Plasma tore through merchant hulls, ripping steel apart like paper. One freighter exploded in fire, scattering debris through the void. Another mining craft cracked in two, venting its crew into the dark. Still, the line held. Scarth's claws dug into his chair. Why do they not flee? His science officer whispered, because the humans showed them how not to. The engine room. Sam Williams stood alone in the Defiant's engine bay. Fire and smoke swallowed the room, sparks leaping from ruptured conduits. His hands, charred and blistered, gripped the reactor controls. Captain, his voice rasped through comms. I can overload the core on your mark. It'll blow both us and them. Bennett's jaw tightened. Understood, Sam, stand by. Williams smiled faintly, though no one could see. He thought of his wife and children back on Earth. Love you, he whispered to the flames. The boarding team's last stand. Inside the second dreadnought, Harrison and his Marines were down to knives and fists. The corridors were painted with blood, alien and human. Hold the reactor, Harrison bellowed, slamming a Kreks warrior into a bulkhead. His last Marine fell beside him, throat cut. Harrison staggered, body torn and bleeding, but still he fought. Captain, he gasped into comms, charges are primed. If you give the word, we'll turn this ship into a coffin. Static filled the line. Then Bennett's voice, Mike, survive if you can, but you've already done enough. Harrison grinned, spitting blood. Damn right we have. Kelly's prayer. In her tiny escape pod, Kelly Adams watched it all unfold. The Defiant tearing forward, civilians dying in fire, Kreks cannons glowing brighter. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering, Come on, Captain, make them remember. The broadcast that shook the galaxy. Bennett opened all frequencies again. His voice was raw but unshaken, carried across every ship, every world listening. We came here because someone called for help, and when someone calls for help, you answer, not because it's safe or profitable or easy, but because it's right. He leaned close, eyes blazing into the camera. Remember this day. Remember what it means to stand when no one else will. His words rippled across the galaxy. On distant worlds, in council chambers, in backwater colonies, beings of every species heard the human captain defy fear itself. The Kreks' hesitation. On the flagship, Scarth's weapons officer shouted, War leader, they are seconds away. Shall we fire? Scarth stared at the screen. The human ship burned, broken, yet still coming, still refusing to stop. For the first time in his long, merciless career, Scarth hesitated. They should be dead, they should have surrendered, yet they keep fighting. Why? Sir, his officer pressed, your orders. Scarth's claws trembled on the arm of his chair. The Defiant's final charge. 5 seconds, Chris Baker said. The crew braced, sparks rained, consoles died, the Defiant screamed like a living thing. Sam, Bennett said, voice calm, be ready. Williams gripped the reactor controls, sweat dripping into his burned hands. Always, Captain. The enemy ship filled the viewport, black steel blotting out the stars. 2 seconds. Bate Clark's voice was quiet. It's been an honor, sir. Bennett's eyes never left the screen. Impact in 1. Cliffhanger. And then, the Kreks comm channel opened. War Leader Scarth's voice filled the bridge, cold but trembling. Human ship, he hissed. This is War Leader Scarth, I surrender. Every alarm froze, every heart on the Defiant stopped. The engines cut out just meters from the dreadnought's hull, momentum carrying them past. Did he just say what I think he said? Chris whispered. On the open channel, Scarth's voice echoed again. All Kreks ships cease fire, release the civilians, stand down immediately. The battlefield fell silent. Where moments before there had been fire and thunder, now there was only the hum of damaged engines and the static of comms. On the Defiant's bridge, the crew sat frozen. Smoke hung thick in the air, consoles sparked weakly. Hearts still pounded from the charge that should have been their end. Did we, Chris Baker whispered, did we just win? Bate Clark stared at her console, disbelief in her eyes. All Krex ships are powering down, Captain. Weapons offline. They're really standing down. Bennett exhaled slowly. His hands trembled against the railing, but his voice stayed calm. We're not dead yet. Let's make sure 200 civilians aren't either. The Krex stand down. On the flagship, War Leader Scarth sat rigid in his chair. His second gaped at him. War Leader, you ordered surrender, before victory was certain. Scarth's gaze was distant, haunted. Victory, look at them, that ship should not exist. That crew should be corpses, yet they came and they would not stop. That is not weakness. That is something else, something my kind has never faced. His second whispered, fear. Scarth's talons curled, respect. The rescue. The Defiant limped closer to the Harmony's light. Fires still burned across her hull. Hull plating hung in tatters, but she moved. Captain Velter, Bennett said over comms, voice hoarse. You're safe now. Begin evacuation procedures. Rescue ships will provide aid. On the Harmony's light, cheers erupted. Families embraced, sobbing. Velter's mandibles trembled as he replied. Captain Bennett, you saved us. No one else came, but you did. Bennett's throat tightened. We just answered the call. Civilian ships swarmed in, their crews working side by side. Haulers provided power. Miners patched breaches with raw steel. Medics transferred wounded. Where there had been despair, now there was life. The cost. In the med bay of the Defiant, Dr. Torres worked tirelessly. Burned crew lay on every cot. She moved from one to another, her own body bruised, her eyes bloodshot, but she would not stop. Doctor, her assistant urged softly, you need rest. Torres shook her head, stitching a wound with shaking hands. I'll rest when they can. 4 crew members had died. 18 more were grievously wounded. Harrison's Marines were down to 6 survivors, each scarred and broken but alive. Sam Williams emerged from the engine room, hands bandaged, face blackened with soot. He leaned against the wall, barely standing. She's hurt bad, Captain, he reported, but she'll make it home. Bennett placed a hand on his shoulder. Because of you, Sam, because of all of you. The message spreads. The story of the battle spread faster than any ship. Across the galaxy, beings of every world heard the tale of a single human warship that faced 3 dreadnoughts and won, not with strength, but with stubbornness, compassion, and sacrifice. On Thern Prime, Admiral Corse faced a council chamber of furious senators. You told us nothing could be done, one hissed, and yet the humans did it with one battered ship. In the Voran Confederation, citizens filled the streets demanding their leaders explain why they had abandoned innocence. In the Meridian Trade Alliance, merchants whispered of new contracts, not for profit but for protection, because humans had shown what civilization was supposed to mean. And in countless smaller places, change was already happening. Merchant crews rewrote protocols to respond to distress calls. Explorers stocked extra rescue gear. Miners swore to never again ignore a signal of need. The galaxy had seen what it meant when humans answered. A year later, the Defiant returned to service scarred but stronger. New armor gleamed on her hull, new weapons bristled at her sides, but her true strength was something else. On her bridge, Captain Bennett stood tall as fresh recruits took their stations. Some were human, others were not, alien volunteers who had joined because they wanted to serve on the ship that changed the galaxy. Jake Morrison looked up from his console. Captain, we're getting a distress call from the Vega system, civilian transport under attack. Bennett's jaw tightened. How many ships are responding? 7 so far, Jake said. Human, Theon, Meridian, Voran, even a Krex vessel. The crew exchanged stunned glances. Bennett allowed himself the faintest smile. Set course, maximum speed. The Defiant turned, her engines roaring as she raced to answer another cry for help. On his homeworld, War Leader Scarth sat in silence. His claws tapped softly on his chair. He remembered the human ship blazing toward him, torn apart yet unstoppable. He remembered the voice of Captain Bennett echoing across the stars. When someone calls for help, you answer. For the first time in his life, Scarth wondered if perhaps strength was not the only law worth following. And so the day passed into legend, when one battered human warship, outnumbered and outgunned, proved that courage could reshape a galaxy. It was called the Defiant Stand. and the galaxy would never be the same.